Hello, welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate. I'm Jude Sandoval, and I am so pleased to be joined today by Eric Payne of the Dating After Divorce Survival Guide podcast. That's a lot to say, but
Yeah.
that is pretty cool. Eric, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No
Hey,
problem.
tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your divorce, where you're at in the divorce process, and maybe share a little bit about the survival guide in your podcast.
Sure, of course. What's my story? Real quick. My 3 to 5 minute story. So I began as a dad blogger back in the early 2000s and kind of had a career in that. Um, the dad blog kind of came to a halt. It was fatherhood and marriage actually, but the dad blog kind of came to a halt because in 2015 my ex-wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. So I felt some kind of way about talking about fatherhood, and well, mentally I just wasn't able to talk about fatherhood, and I definitely felt some kind of way about talking about marriage, being that I was going through a divorce. But it wasn't only divorce. I went through, my father came down with dementia. It presented. My ex-wife filed for divorce. My son got kicked out of school for poor academic performance. And then let's see. And then maybe, so we're talking about a 10-month span of time. And then at the end of the 10 months, which was probably like 3 or 4 months into my divorce, after receiving a promotion, I got laid off at my job after buying a I mean, it's not luxury now, but it was luxury at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
due to depreciation, it's just a car now. But I'm still very proud of it. But I was extremely proud of it back then. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much my deal. Like 10 months. I always say 10 months from 2014 to 2015 literally changed my life. I am five as of so this is June, right? So as of this month, I am 5 years divorced. It's pretty good. I mean, meaning as far as my relationship with my ex-wife goes, it's pretty good. I have a 14-year-old daughter, a 25-year-old son. My son, when I met my ex-wife, my son came with the package. I adopted him as my own, and then together we had a daughter. A lot of times it's funny, since we're on a men's show, the assumption is that I had the kid. I brought the kid along, and I'm like, no, because they say, well, how do he looks like your brother. I mean, she's younger than me, but I guess we do kind of favor each other. I think after you spend enough time with one another, you just kind of like take on your mannerisms. And then anytime, it's funny, he was over here the other day for Father's Day with one of his girlfriends, and one of the, and she kind of marveled at how she saw a lot of, I guess, when she heard me talk and say and do things, she saw a lot of him in that. So, that was kind of cool.
Absolutely. It's the modeling thing, right?
Yeah,
That's a
definitely.
good thing.
Definitely. But yeah, that's my deal. As far as that goes, like I said, me and the ex, we get along pretty good. I mean, there's moments where we have issues, but as far as co-parenting goes, it's fine. I mean, there's only one child to co-parent, and she, as a 14-year-old at this point, is has opted to spend the majority of her time over here by me. Just for anybody who's out there kind of feeling some kind of way, I'm not saying look forward to it, because one of the things that I tell guys all the time is, it's about the kid, right? And are you still there? Your picture went
Yeah,
out.
I'm still here. Our
Oh,
video just went out, but that's okay.
okay.
We just keep talking.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sometimes, when you're going through divorce, you're like, especially if custody starts to become an issue, and please excuse the grinding sounds. One neighborhood over from me, they're building a neighborhood. So
Okay.
they decided today to bring the dump trucks out. But
No worries.
anyway, yeah, I say, look, it's about the child's health and mental health and well-being, and having the love of both parents. And don't wish or want for something, because when it does show up, it never shows up the way that you want it to show up. So for example, I opted not to fight for custody of my daughter, and in what, 5 years, 4 or 5 years later, she opted to choose to live with me. So I'm not going to say I won, because it's not about winning, but
Right.
you don't necessarily, I know in the thick of things, you think that there's no tomorrow, but if you kind of just sit back and pause a little bit, things work out the way that they're supposed to work out.
That's great advice. It's something that was a revelation for me, that once I started viewing things as life is happening for me and not to me,
Right.
that it's a game changer. And even though you might think that something is a quote unquote negative, that it's moving you in a direction, your life in a direction that's always in your best interest. And that's, like you said, with your daughter, we have some very similar parallels and timelines. I read your bio. We started dating, got married in our late 20s, got divorced in our 40s, early 40s. Both got 14-year-old daughters. I actually have two. Yeah, similar experiences, and talking about when to start dating, and having somebody to talk to is great. But sometimes our friends don't have the best advice for us. And my buddy's advice was, man, you got to get out there. And it was, and even while I was going through the divorce, and man, when I decided to go do something, I go do something. And so I got out there, started dating again, and gotten in a relationship in my divorce, and it wasn't good, and then got in another one, and then got another one.
Yeah.
And finally about four years in, said, I just need to take the time to to spend the time myself and go through some things. So let's talk about that first, about when is a good time to start dating once you get divorced. And maybe we can both agree on, and I don't like giving advice, but just maybe saying it's probably best to wait until you're actually divorced. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, let's start there. That's a good place to start. Definitely.
Be divorced first. And hey, I can say that because I started dating before. I was like, man, look, all right, you know what? This one didn't work. I'm not a quitter. I'm going right back to it. But it's best to be divorced first.
Yeah, so many people feel like, hey, well, look, I just need to live my best life, forget him or forget her. Unfortunately, my my ex was dating. I genuinely believe, based on how quickly she had coupled after we divorced, that whatever it was had begun before we got divorced. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it's a good move, man. It's not a good look, because you always want to, so I'm try to be spiritual and mental and all of that. So I'm going to throw a little bit of that in there. But sure, you never want to start thing. You never want to start something before something else is finished. And if you want to start something, definitely start it clean. I mean, it's no different than, if you have a job like that and you give your 2 weeks notice, that last day, bust it out. You know what I mean? Finish as strong as you started, versus like kind of being like, oh, to hell with it. And, leaving a whole bunch of shit for someone else to figure out. You know what I mean? Because this is what I was going to say, how you end a thing determines how you begin a thing. And if you end something on a bad foot, right, then you're setting up energy to do the same thing moving forward, because you're not doing right. You know what I mean? And I don't mean like right versus wrong. I mean, you're not doing right by yourself. Forget anybody else. You got to start with yourself. You're not doing right by yourself. Exactly. And I think, I read this book at the beginning of last year, and then I read it again this year. It's called Silence in the Age of Noise. People are scared to death, men especially, because people don't talk. We don't talk. There's no book on this thing. We kind of just wing it. The people are scared to be by themselves, because then they're just stuck dealing with themselves, stuck looking at themselves in the mirror, stuck thinking the thoughts that they think. They'd rather be distracted. And a lot of times that distraction comes very easily in the form of a woman, especially if they see you as being the greener grass. Like, I don't know, she must be crazy. I don't know how she could have ever left you. I don't know how, or, I don't know how that happened, or this, that, and the third. I mean, that's very easy to say, not knowing every piece to the equation. And I would just say, don't go for it. And because, even on that piece, so, you asked me one question, but I'm going a little bit off on a tangent. When you're in pain, people can pick up on that. And if someone feels like they have something to offer, and if you're vulnerable enough, I mean, it's very
Yep.
easy to get caught into a situation, and then you're in a situation with someone and you realize that, one, you don't know them, two, you don't really necessarily want to be there because you're probably still lamenting over the situation that you're in, and then three, you don't even like that person. So then
Right.
you're just
Right.
stuck, you know?
And that goes to my next point, which is it keeps you from getting somebody caught in your drama.
Right.
So if you're not divorced, if you haven't taken the time to sort it out, and the next thing I'll say to that is wait at least a year. Wait at least, because you're going through the holidays. You're learning how to co-parent if you have kids.
Right.
You're learning how to do all that stuff again. You might be getting in touch. One of the other podcasts we did was about you know, learning about yourself again, and learning about who you are, and going through that process, and
Right.
how to quote unquote start over again,
Right.
and take that time to start over. And then you're in a much better position, like you said, to be able to offer something, create that life, and offer something as far as a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, if you don't take the time to work on you, then you're just like, as you said, you're just inviting people into your mess, and you're not getting to know who you actually are, or maybe even taking the time to find out what role you contributed to
Yeah.
what happened. I tell people, and it turns a lot of people off, but I tell people often that I love the journey of getting to know me, because I'm getting to know me for the very first time. Because if you think about it, so I'm 48, and my parents are old school. They raised me based on the way they were raised. They're not like all new agey like me and listen to my child. Like they didn't listen to
Right.
me, and they didn't care about anything I had to say. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they did, but they, obey your parents, listen to your father, listen to your mother, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? So, I would honestly say that I think a lot of my journey was autopilot. You know,
Hmm.
got good grades, went to so I could go to college, got decent grades my first, in undergrad, got good grades in college, in grad school, then got out into the world, got a decent job, then found the person. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was actually looking, but it just followed a progression. Then I got married. Then, you have the kids and blah, blah, blah. And then you get left high and dry. And you're like, I didn't sign off on any of this stuff. It
Hmm.
was just happening, like you said, happening, you said off camera, happening to me. But at that point, it was happening to me. So,
Right.
what do I need to do to start becoming a participant in my life? Well, I have to pull back and figure out who I am, and figure out how I'm showing up in situations. And that's in friendships, at work, in relationships, in my previous relationship, in my, with my parents, with my kids. Just how am I showing up? Who am I? And
Right.
and and that's some painstaking, ugly, long-term work.
Well, but if you can get into the mindset like that, like it sounds you have, that it's an everyday discovery, it can be it can be rewarding. It can be
Oh,
very exciting to see who you are, the what you can accomplish, the things that you can develop, the relationship. Like
oh yeah.
for me, one of the most amazing things that I found is the capacity to be a single father, and the deep relationship that I have with all three of my daughters. It's really absolutely amazing. It's like nothing else that I've experienced with anybody, and it's it just, but it took time. It took time to really
Right.
understand. Counseling. That's my next thing. Find somebody if you can afford therapy, counseling, coaching.
Hmm.
That's a fantastic way to do it. If you can't, there's 12 steps. There's all kinds of other support groups. There's meetups, etc. to go to and talk with somebody. Do that, because there's just talking to somebody, just like talking today with you, there will be something that I gain and I garner out of our conversation that I'll be
Right.
thinking about later, and thinking, yeah, man, I really liked what you had to say about that. I think that's interesting. Maybe I can apply that to my life, or how is that showing up in my life, or what can I do?
Right. And I think to your point, there's one thing you have to add into that as well. You have to be open. So I was probably a terrible
Yeah.
patient, right? Terrible therapy patient, because the second I didn't hear something I wanted to hear, I was out.
Right. Yeah.
I
Right.
hopscotched all around. So I'm in Atlanta. I hopscotched all around Atlanta looking for someone to agree with me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And eventually I did get people to agree with me,
Oh yeah.
and they were quacks. I'm not even talking about therapists. I mean, like, I remember one time I was in McDonald's, and this is nothing against homeless people, but I was in McDonald's, and this homeless lady said, "You will have everything that you want. You just have to work hard for it." And I was like, "Yes, yes."
You get it.
Yeah, you get it. And I remember I went back to my ex because I was still trying to reconcile with her after, like, the knife had been, dug deep into things, and I was still trying to reconcile. I said, "Yeah, this woman at McDonald's looked at me and she said, blah blah blah." She looked at me like I had 32 heads. She was like, "You don't get away from me and just pick up this kid and keep going." You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's funny. No, that's this will be a little side note, but I'm again another parallel where my parents weren't very spiritual. I'm much, I'm very spiritual. I don't want to say new agey, but I get into that sometimes. But sometimes, you know what? It's not a sign. It's a homeless person. That's a little crazy. That's it. Sometimes I just gotta say, yeah, that wasn't a sign. It was just,
man.
yeah,
That's just,
yeah,
and that was
just life.
not only was it just that, it was also your brain, like,
Right.
trying to see, wanting to see what it wanted to see. I read something once where I forgot which book. So I read a ton of books. I read like maybe 10, 15
Mm-hmm.
books. One of the books that I read, it said, "Look, you will assign symbolism to things that you want to see. Should I
Mm-hmm.
take this flight? You look up at the time and it's 7:47. Oh, well, God said that I should take this flight. No, it's just 7:47,
Yeah, exactly.
and but you saw what you wanted to see. And one thing I actually, maybe a few months ago, Mel Robbins, she's
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube. Yeah, one thing that
Yep.
Mel Robbins said is that you have to actually fight your DNA, like fight your brain. You are literally designed to solve problems. So
Right.
what we can do, especially as men, since we're, the majority of us are fixers or think that we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be fixers, we will get caught in a loop of trying to fix something,
Yep.
lamenting over what could have been. So I'll say this. So I think one of the things that kept me stuck before I just to move forward with my life is that I was lamenting over what could have been, and I
Mm-hmm.
kept trying to fix that to look the way it should have been for me.
Mm-hmm.
However, it was what it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't it. I was literally being shown what was happening. I was literally being shown that, hey, look, this is what you have. Now act on it. Not go back in time and find that key, not do a Avengers Endgame time heist and go
Right.
find that, that specific moment where you should have said this or should have said that. Everything you did, you did. There was no should have. Should have is fantasy. We talk about fairy tales. The real
Mm-hmm.
fairy tale is what you should have done, because
Yeah.
you don't know, because we don't exist in any reality other than the one that we're in. So when you
Mm-hmm.
start talking about what you should have done, I mean, you could say, well, maybe you could have said that, but you still don't know what the outcome would have been. It might have been the same, or you might not have even had the opportunity to even say that. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right. Right.
you
No,
know,
there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. One of the most impactful books for me was The Power of Now by Eckhart
hmm
Tolle,
hmm
which just helped me to stop going back and thinking about things, or going forward and thinking
hmm
about things, and really stopping and being aware and understanding what's coming up, and those feelings, like you said, you can talk yourself into anything. I was
yeah,
talking myself into a whole lot of things, and I was talking myself into relationships, and then those relationships were just the same train wreck of my marriage, and so much so I tell this story all the time, but it was just so absolutely um just profound. Is my 10-year-old points out some very, very specific characteristics of my relationship with my new girlfriend that was just a theme through all of my relationships. And she's 10, and I'm in my 40s, and I hadn't still figured it out. So life will just, like you said, make you keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it, unless you take that time. And that leads me to my next point, which is take the time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is the relationship. I think how many years did you say you were married?
So I was married. So it was a 15-year relationship, dated for 7 years, married for 7.5. So
yeah. So I was married for 11, and that's a long time to be with somebody. You have kids. There's a lot of intimacy. There's a lot that goes into it, and having that end and then having to start over from that, there is a healing process that you really have to go through. And that's part of that year, going through the holidays, being by yourself on the holidays without your kids, and just crying. I remember just being lonely and crying when I didn't have my kids for 4th of July or one of the holidays, because I didn't become a dad to not have my kids around. I love my girls. I want them around all the time. I want to see them. I want to hear what they're doing. I want to talk to them. And just, you all of a sudden become 50%, 50%, depends. It's
part-time.
Mine was, it's part-time. You become a part-time dad. So that's part of that healing process. Talk about that. Talk about your healing process over some of the years.
So I think that one of the biggest things that graded me, and I'll go to my grave, it won't change. Same thing you just said. I put my daughter to bed every night. I woke her up every day. You know what I'm saying? So to go from that, so we had 50-50, but it was really weird in the beginning. It was like 2 days on, then 3 days off, then 2 days on. It didn't make any sense. And
we had that too.
Yeah. So the days that I couldn't put her to bed or wake her up in the morning, like I was furious, and the weekends that I didn't have her, you figure, hey, party hard. But instead, I just was out window shopping and driving around in circles in my Batmobile and, doing all of these different things to keep from coming home.
Yeah.
Like because I just couldn't deal with a quiet house. And then I would just kind of like sleep the weekends away or do something. I mean, I would do things, but I was kind of just roaming. I was Ronin. I was like a Ronin. I was like a swordsman with a samurai with no king to protect. I had, I was wandering. But actually it was in that wandering that I started to discover me. So 2 things. So the first thing that I had to overcome, I just mentioned, well, there were 3 things. So the first thing was like trying to go back in the past, but there was this other weird thing that was happening too. Like one of the reasons why, like I felt like, I think I thought a little bit more highly of myself than I should have, because I kind of went out of it like, hey, 6 months to a year, I'll be remarried again. I mean, why not? Like that's going to be easy. And, I need to show, since my previous relationship was such a disaster, I wasn't even over it, but I was saying this, right? I was like, I need to show my daughter like what it means to be in a stable, non-argumentative household or whatever the hell. Right.
Right.
I was literally about to give myself an ulcer running around in circles. Like I wasn't dating, but I wasn't doing anything. Like I wasn't connecting with anybody. I was just making myself sick, carrying the burden of trying to be all things to my kids, when the only thing that my kids, specifically my daughter, needed from me was to be there. Yep. And once I recognized that, and she even said that, like, so I, again, not dealing with the situation that I was in, I immediately moved into a 1-bedroom apartment about a mile away from where I used to live. And I didn't have her come over for a while because I wasn't trying to disrupt her life. So I didn't take any furniture. So I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment with no furniture, and I didn't want her to come over. But eventually she came over and she wandered around the apartment and she looked around. She said, "Oh, this is nice. I have 2 houses now." And that kind of like let me know that it wasn't about where I was. It was about the fact that I was there. And that she honestly triggered my healing. I know I was team dad, team marriage, but I also know a ton of divorced guys and that are older than me that are, still in that like purgatory space, kind of like, yeah, they date, but they have they're like sloppy bachelors, if I can explain it like that. Like it's
Hmm.
just very like really great guys, but I would say I'm about to date myself a little on the Oscar Madison side. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Like
Yeah.
just making it, and they don't have to answer to anybody, and they're happy that they don't have to answer to anybody. Still arguing with their exes and stuff like that, and their children are grown. And I just decided that I just did not want to be that dad. I wanted to be like, I wanted to, somewhere along my journey, it clicked. Like, one, stop trying to compete with my ex, because trying to do, have a relationship and get married and all the rest of that and all this, that, and the third, that was an attempt to show her up, to show her, I'm better than you. I can do this better than you. I'm better than you. That's
Hmm.
why, I had to dispense that. And then I had this little girl, she was 9, looking up at me. And I said, you know what? I need to just be a cool dad. I need to just be on top of things. I need to just be, the captain of my fate, and live the best possible life that I can, and pour as much love into her as I can, and teach her that you can be down, because unfortunately I put on such a show through the divorce
Hmm.
that it was kind of obvious who was leaving who. So, I um just show her that you can bounce back from anything and be whoever it is you want to be. And I didn't necessarily include her in, like, I didn't say it to her, because I don't want you walk that fine line of including your children in your grown up stuff when you do that.
Hmm.
I just made a decision that I was going to be a better human being and show her that you can go through hard times and still smile and still have joy. Now that took time, but that was what led to my healing. And that's also what caused me to just say, however long it takes, I'm gonna leave the dating piece alone, because I don't know what I want. I mean, now there were some slip ups along the way, but I didn't. I just decided that it might be better to just spend time alone, and it is the work is it's beautiful work, but it's all I'll say is that for anybody who is in this space, it's very ugly to begin, but it's no different than your first day at the gym.
Right.
Either your first day at the gym period, or your first day at the gym after a very long hiatus. Like, usually when
It's
I go to the gym,
painful.
right, it's painful. I'm
Hmm.
dressed head to toe in sweats,
Yeah.
like, I don't want anybody to see me. But if I keep at it, 6, 7 months, people are like, Eric, would you please put your shirt on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just have to commit. That's it.
Yeah. Absolutely. But that takes that time, that takes that space to create that healing. Everything that you said, and all the there I don't know how a dozen gems that you said right there in that span. But that all took taking the time,
Took
being
time.
alone, thinking. It takes efforts, figuring out how to do it. And if I would again give some advice, take the time, actually schedule the time
Hmm.
to do that. And whether that's self-care, where the part of that might be self-care, going to the gym, finding a therapist,
Hmm.
making sure that you're showing up for your parenting time, and being focused, and concentrating on the kids, or kids.
Hmm.
What you're doing, have something planned, have your dinner planned. They're going to learn. That's the other thing that you said. I didn't have to say any, You said I didn't have to say anything. They learn more from modeling than they
Yep.
do anything else that we can possibly say. And
Hmm.
that was a revelation for me too. And I kind of had the same thing, kind of what you described. I had all this shame around what I believed it should have been, and I was never going to get divorced, and my parents were divorced, and that was never going to happen to me, and love would conquer, and I could just work and love so hard that it would be perfect. And it ended up, it just didn't. And then I
Right.
was had all this shame around it. And then immediately I wanted to become super dad. I wanted to be able to do
Hmm.
everything and be everything. And
Hmm.
man, that is the fastest way to, like, creating the most unhealthy environment you possibly can, because you're just gonna kill yourself, and it's
Right. You're
not
gonna have an
gonna.
ulcer, you're gonna stroke out, like all kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and so the last piece I wanted to talk about also was working on forgiveness. There's been all kinds of studies that have shown that the most one of the most healthy things that you can do for yourself, and this and they're showing this in studies. Mind Valley, I don't know if you follow Vishen Lakhiani and some of the stuff they're doing, and
No.
Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
They're actually studying and tracking this stuff, and forgiveness is one of the top things that you can do for your health. And so one of the things, when it gets to the point, and for me that was a little bit of a process, because not only forgiving my ex but forgiving myself too. So forgiveness goes both ways. It's not just the exterior and the people around you. It's forgiving yourself. I had to forgive myself for getting a divorce, for
Mm-hmm.
not having the environment or the family lifestyle that I believe that we should be having. And ongoing, I have to forgive myself for some of that stuff too. And it's a really, really healthy thing to do. And that's something that potentially can be wrapped with the counseling or therapy or whomever you might be talking or working with. But talk a little bit about maybe some forgiveness in your life.
Yeah. So I think for me, forgiveness, first of all, it doesn't happen in a day. And I think, just because you feel very puffed up and you're like, I forgive you, or I forgive me, or I forgive her, or I forgive him, or whatever, you can say that day, but understand it's going to take more than just that. Those revelatory moments, you have to string them together, because it's a process. It's a process. So my theory, I have a couple things about forgiveness. So when it comes, we'll start with the ex-partner, right? So the way I look at it is, forgiveness is understanding that you have paid out a loan that someone can never repay. Like when you seek revenge,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking, like, if you think about it think about it financially. When you seek revenge, you're looking for payment on what you've given, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you might have to do a couple mental backflips to understand that,
Mm-hmm.
but you're seeking, I want blah blah blah, whether, even if it's like revenge sex, you just want something. You know what I mean? You want something back.
Right.
But I think forgiveness comes with that other person when you understand that you're not getting anything back, like, ever. You know what I
Right.
mean? And if you do, just take it as a blessing, take it as, fortitude or serendipity, and keep it moving. But you can't get back something that someone doesn't have to give. You can't get blood from a stone.
Mm-hmm.
Another analogy that I use with a friend of mine who's actually going through things, and this is from a co-parenting standpoint. A lot of times people say, oh, well, that other person, that other person, that other person. Okay, but the kids are involved, right? So if 80 pounds needs to be lifted, and that other person is literally demonstrating that they only had the capacity to lift 20 pounds, what are you going to do? Yell and scream about the other 20 pounds?
Right.
Or are you going to just lift them
That's a
and,
great analogy.
and then take it up with, karma, the universe? Like, you do what you need to do. You do not need to be the guardian or the watchman of that other person. Like, one time, I got into this huge argument with her. She was in Paris with the kids. We got into this fight, and I said, you need to let me go and stop blaming me for whatever the hell she was blaming me for that day. And she said, I've let you go. I've let you go. And, I let you go a while ago. And, you need to let me go. And I thought about it, and I was like, I do. But what I needed to let go of was the idea that, based on who I was, she was going to respond in a way that I would like. Now, I'm not saying that to paint her as a bad person. I mean, I think that goes for everybody, right?
Sure.
Just because you conduct yourself a certain way doesn't mean that anybody else will. It'd be nice, but it doesn't mean they will, and it doesn't mean they have to. So you have to be prepared to accept that. And that takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of, and then that's where the forgiveness of yourself comes along. Um, I once it was kind of funny. You were talking about healing. So the more I healed, the more I would wake up in the middle of the night, like, the hell? Like, why did I do that? Like, why did I let that happen? Why did I even let her say that to me? Like, are you serious? And I spent all of 2018 mad at myself. You could not talk to me. I was furious. The second you said anything that I didn't like, I was going nuclear because I was mad at myself.
Mm-hmm.
But finally I had to say, you were operating with the knowledge that you had then.
Yep.
And you are better now because of it. You didn't do anything. You didn't lose anything. Nothing went wrong because you chose to act the way that you did. You acted in a way that you were supposed to at that particular point in time.
Right.
And that's it. And I'll say this. I have another example, but I definitely will say this to wrap this part up. I knew that I finally did reach forgiveness. And the reason that I knew that I reached forgiveness was because for the very first time, and my dating has been very sporadic. I haven't really been in any real substantial relationships. Listen to the podcast for that.
Yeah.
But I knew I had forgiven because the anger drained out of me. And I knew that it was, when I finally knew that it was real, it was because I was lonely for the very first time.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is that my anger had become my bedfellow. Like I was so angry at her and so angry at myself that was taking up all the space that I had in my heart. Like, I wasn't gonna be in a relationship anyway because I didn't have any space for anybody in my life.
Right.
When that stuff drained out of me and stayed gone for like 2, 3, 4, 5, like it stayed gone.
Yeah.
I felt extreme loneliness. And then I was like, oh, so I really am in this by myself. Now, I'd already started doing the work. I was doing the work on me and all this, that, and the third. But forgiveness, I understood that I reached forgiveness. So I say this to say, don't, we as people like to assign all of these lofty things to the things that we experience. So forgiveness is for you, and it does well for your body and all that, and it does. But there is another side to everything, and no one really talks about that. Maybe some people don't even recognize it. So what I'm saying is that I discovered that I had experienced true forgiveness because once, in the absence of anger, I felt loneliness. And you're like, you might think, well, that's not good. No, it is.
Yeah.
Because then I was able to, that was my ground zero. That I was able to build from there. There was no more past. The book was closed. The chapter was, well, not the book, the chapter was turned. And now, and then I was able to just begin writing from that point forward.
Yeah.
And that's where I am today. I mean, and do I get angry? Sure. But I'm not like, do I get upset by things? Sure. But I am not enraged or, furious over the past or what someone can't do. I mean, I had an argument with my ex, 2 days ago, literally yelling and screaming and spitting, and then took a deep breath. I said, all right, now what I was saying was, and we actually finished talking. It was pretty cool. So,
well, that's great. That's pretty profound. The fact that you've taken the time and done the work to understand and see that the pain that's going to be one of my gems that I take from this. The pain was your bedfellow. Yeah. Or the anger was your bedfellow.
It was pain. It was pain. It was the pain.
Well, it's pain. It is pain, right? The anger is like produced from,
the anger that was defending, that came up as a defense from the pain that had become my companion.
Yep.
No matter what gibberish I was talking, no matter what, it didn't matter because I was just furious.
Yep.
Over what happened and ashamed.
Yeah. And then the loneliness part too. And loneliness is not bad. It is a good thing if you can be with it and you can be lonely. Being lonely, I mean, actually being lonely, like taking the time to be lonely can be a really very healthy thing for somebody. But that's probably that we could talk about that for probably a whole another 30 minutes, because that's
a 3-day conference.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So let's briefly just review kind of what we talked about with folks, which was the first thing specifically around our topic of when is probably a good time to start dating. And while that's unique to everybody and everybody's different, and we have no specific set ways to say it's, I one time heard it was like 3 months for every year you're married or something. I read all the books and I heard, listened to all the blogs and all the dating and all that stuff too. But there's really no set way. But a few things like we talked about today: be divorced first. That's really going to be an important thing, so that you're not dragging somebody into the drama of the divorce and the process and all of that. And try to wait maybe at least a year to go through those holidays and spend that time alone. If you have kids, learn how to co-parent and learn how to set up your environment and where you're at, and get comfortable with single parenting. If you can do it from the time that you get divorced, get counseling, therapy, support group, whatever that may be, and that's going to help with the last two, which is work on healing yourself and work on the forgiveness.
Yeah, I think, one way to frame it for anybody that's really, willing to dismiss what we're saying because they want to hear what they want to hear, right?
Yeah, we do.
Because I was that guy, right? I was in a relationship from the age of 28 to 43. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely absurd for me to believe that in 3 months I'm going to undo all of that. Absurd.
But we can do it. We're going to do it.
We're going to do it. And that was one of the things that I had to, come to grips with the man in the mirror. Like, dude, you're like, it's not even about being messed up. It's the same thing. Let's make it a weight thing. You don't put on 30 pounds and then lose you don't put 30 pounds on from 20 to 50 or 20 to 40 or something like that, then find out that you have some super vacation to go to. And then you think in 6 months you're gonna be like 167 with a six pack and vascular. Maybe if you're an actor and have a trainer like literally torturing you 24/7, but it's not going to happen. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice trying to rush the process. I real quick, a guy asked me, going through a divorce, he said, "Hey, so quick question for you." And it was so funny. Like I had to conceal my laughter almost. I did smile though. He said, so when does the pain go away? Like, I remember one woman asked me, she was a new mom. She said, "So when do you get a full night's rest?" And I was like, I still don't get to bed at a decent hour. Yeah. But
I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what's going on with my kids and my life.
Right. But what I said to the guy who asked, when does the pain go away? I said, and I was 3.5 years in. I was like, look, I'm 3.5 years in. This is when I was experiencing the forgiveness piece that I spoke to you about. I said, I'm 3.5 years in, and I am just beginning to, experience the pain going away. I don't think you have to I don't think you should frame it in terms of a time. Yes, you definitely need to give yourself some time, but how soon or long it takes is entirely up to your willingness to go through whatever you have to go through. This is a blessing. As terrible as it is, it's a blessing for you. And once it becomes a blessing for you, it can become a blessing for everyone else around you. It doesn't have to be the ripple effect that causes like disaster with everyone around you. Right. One of the reasons why I did the podcast, and it's humor based because that's my gateway drug, is the humor, is that men and divorced women are out here like just ruining the dating experience for several people that haven't experienced that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So look, let's take some time and get to know us and get to be better and be better because of this rather than worse. Let's turn the negative into a positive versus being like such a stereotypical stigma, across every narrative that you can find, television, like everything.
Yep. Amen. That's a good place to end because that's fantastic advice. Eric Payne, I really appreciate it. Eric, where can people tune into the Dating After Divorce Survival Guide podcast, and where else can they find you online, social media,
Yep.
etc.?
Yep. So the Dating After Divorce Survival Guide, and it's a serial podcast. I don't have podcast in the title, but the Dating After Divorce Survival Guide is pretty much on every platform in existence, with the exception of maybe one or two. So if you just put in Dating After Divorce Survival Guide at this point, it's Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, everything. My website for the podcast, and I'm breaking down and getting ready to build a website and doing all that stuff, but I'm not there yet. But the website that actually the podcast lives on is datingafterdivorce.guide.
Okay.
Dating, so it's no jazzed up spelling. It's exactly the way it's spelled. Datingafterdivorce.guide. You can find me on Instagram at Eric L. Payne. So I don't know how to spell my name. ERICLPAYNE. And on Facebook, my Facebook page is, if you type in Dating After Divorce, it'll show up. It's basically my logo is pretty distinct. It is it's a heart, like a Cupid's heart, but it's black. It's black and it's cracked to hell.
Yeah.
And it's got a chain around it with a lock. So
okay, great.
I think that's a pretty appropriate graphic for the way people's hearts are coming out of this, because at the end of the day, it's the business of the state of your heart, and
absolutely,
one more.
Okay.
It's not about, like, I understand, like, oh, well, I need to get mine, I deserve. What you deserve is to take care of your heart, because your heart is what you have to live with. Women come and go, the kids leave you, but your heart is what you're stuck with.
Absolutely. That's great. So I would ask anybody that is watching, listening, leave some comments below. Feel free to reach out to Eric. If you'd like to listen to this again, it will be listed up at the divorcedadvocate.com. That's where you can reach me, and you can also find some other resources there as well. So Eric, thanks again. I really appreciate it. This was, man, I'm going to actually have to go through, listen, and write down some of these pearls that you dropped on us today, because there were a whole lot of them, and hopefully we can get together and talk again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
All right.